everyone, this is Anna from Savvy Cat Realty. For those of you who don't know, Savvy Cat Realty is a relocation and investment agency that helps expats move to Portugal and basically becomes their man on the inside or woman. And we help in the whole process from getting the visa to leaving your country and choosing the location you want to come to, getting all the networking and things in order in that location, and then, of course, renting, purchasing, and even constructions and renovations. So if you are looking to those kinds of services, you can take a look at our website in www.savvycatrealty.com, where all of our services are listed. We are very transparent on everything we include in pricing, and you will be able to find everything accessible there. So today, I'm here to talk to you about condomínios. And condomínios is basically what Americans would call the Homeowners Association, except it works in a completely different way here. So I'm not American, but a very big part of my clients are. And one of the things that they are constantly worried about is, what about homeowners association? What if I can't have a pool? What if I have to change the color of my house? Well, that doesn't really work the same way here, thankfully, because from what I've been hearing from my clients, the homeowners associations in America kind of sound like a nightmare. And our condominiums are not perfect or anywhere close to that. But it kind of sounds like I prefer this way around. So I'm going to explain to you a bit of what a condominium is and how it works. So when you are on a single property, and here in Portugal, you have basically two types of property. You have vertical property and horizontal property. So when you have vertical property, it means that all the property belongs to a single owner and it's considered a single habitation. And where you have horizontal property, it means, for example, a building with different factions and belonging to different owners. So wherever you have horizontal properties or where you have shared communal spaces, which is not that common here, to be honest. So I know that in America, it is very common to have gated communities where there is the homeowner associations and so on. Here in Portugal, that is usually not the case. You do have some gated communities, but you see them mostly in very touristic locations like the Algarve, and they basically operate like a resort. And this is not a standard situation in Portugal at all. So those communities are the only exception to where vertical property belongs to eventually a condominium. However, like I was saying, these are the exception and not the rule. So the rule is where you have fractions and horizontal property, you can have a condominium. However, it is not mandatory to have a condominium, which is a bit problematic because, well, you have to manage the communal spaces in the building, don't you? But truth is, most of the buildings do have a condominium unless they are single-owned, and only in cases in which there is a small building in which the owners get along between themselves and there is no official condominium organization, most cases do have an official organization. And this organization, it can either be an external hired company or it can be an internal organization. So one of the owners in the building of the fractions can be nominated condominium representative and manage the condominium. And some buildings will do that because it's more cost efficient. Usually these people do it at a very low rate in order to save the representation fees themselves. And the most common is, of course, to have condominium companies managing the property. So these companies, of course, are like everything is a hit or miss. There is a lot of people complaining about bad management in condominiums. However, this is often not solely the problem or the responsibility of the managers. One of the things that happens here in Portugal rather often is that people have second houses or vacation houses or houses that are being used for family and so on. And because they aren't commonly present in that property, they often do not engage with their duties as condominium part, so as someone part of a communal building. And this can be rather problematic for the condominiums. But where it comes to the actual costs of condominiums, which is, of course, something that most people are concerned about, it will depend a lot on the number of amenities this condominium has. So if you have a small condominium in which you only have like 1 or 2 elevators and the cleaning and the communal spaces, these ones are usually pretty cheap. I usually will say that they will be somewhere between 30 and 60, 70 euros per month. Where you have more expensive and complex maintenance systems like pools or gyms and so on, the prices can get a lot higher. And in truth, we have come across very uncomfortable prices, especially in this kind of gated communities I was telling you about. So for us Portuguese people, paying more than 100 euros per month on condominium is kind of an outrage. We will not like to do that. And it is justifiable if it's like a luxury building with lots of amenities and not that many residents. But we do come across a lot of very high value condominium costs, especially in this kind of gated communities in the Algarve, for example, that pretty much operate like a resort, like I was saying. So the most outrageous one we saw, I believe it was 10K per year. But like I was saying, this was the most outrageous one that we came across, and it's not the norm at all. Another thing to note is that closed gate communities more often than not pretty much operate like timeshares. So a lot of people that buy in these communities, they do holiday renting that is fully managed by the gated community organization that is basically like a condominium. And more often than not, you aren't even allowed to have your own management. You are forced to use the management of the community you are in. So if you are looking into those kinds of properties, do be aware of that. Because, well, it is very restrictive and it does have, of course, its advantages, and often these organizations guarantee a certain amount of revenue, but they usually have very high costs too. So in my personal opinion, I don't think it's one of the best turnovers at all, but everyone has their own needs and requirements, and if that matches yours, that's great. Just be aware of what the limitations are. Regarding the situation of normal condominiums, I was saying that it can be a bit problematic, the non-present owners, so to say. When it comes to these regular condominiums, you do have a mandatorily a yearly condominium meeting. But most cases there is a meeting either every month or every 3 or 6 months. It's free to organize by each condominium's needs. And another thing that happens, like I was saying, is when there are these situations of non-present owners, there is a minimum majority needed in order to get approval to do certain things. I believe it's 45%. I was actually just looking into that a few days ago, but we will confirm the amount and have it appear here. And basically, when you have this number of votes, you are able to approve budgets, works, whatever you need, purchases, etc. Another thing that it's relevant to note is that urgent works do bypass condominiums, so that if there are urgent works that are deemed a risk, you can proceed with them and then charge the condominium or make the condominium do them. But of course, this only applies to urgent works. Another situation that is common is when you get an older building that needs work. Usually the budget for that work is approved on a condominium meeting, and then the payments for that budget are parcellated and kept in a condominium account and then paid when the works are initiated. So what sometimes happens is if you buy a property on a condominium that has already agreed on a budget for renovations, but hasn't had that renovations yet made, so it's still on the parcellated payments phase, those payments will pass down to you once you purchase the property. So it's important to be aware of what the situation is when you buy in an apartment building and so on. And it's actually nowadays mandatory to get a certificate from the condominium management when you buy a fraction, saying that that fraction does not have any debts to the condominium when you buy it. Those debts actually do not transfer to the new owner at all, but what has happened in the past was that the previous owners would sell the property to the new owners, but wouldn't pay their condominium debts, which would be a problem, of course, to everyone in the condominium, including the new person that had nothing to do with it, but would be the scapegoat because it would be the available person. So a new law was passed making it mandatory to have a declaration of non-debt from the condominium, which does make perfect sense, but it can be problematic in situations where there is no formal condominium. So that is yet another thing to be aware of when purchasing a property. Overall, condominiums in Portugal aren't debt restrictive. So like I was saying, in America, there is that whole situation of condominiums stopping you from making a pool, or stopping you to making a binders, or changing the color of your house and so on. That won't happen here. The only thing that happens here is that when you have a building, especially a more modern building, the older buildings, usually there is no such problem. But when you have a more modern building, there may be presets. For example, if you want window covers or new shifts, binds, I don't know what you call it. Basically the thing that covers the windows. There may be presets that are pre-approved by the condominium, and if you want to put something different, you may need to get permission from the condominium. Of course, if you want to make permanent changes to the exterior of a communal building, you also need to get permission from the condominium. Overall, excluding the gated communities, if you own a vertical property, your neighbors have absolutely no say in what you do. And the only thing that you need to be concerned about is whether or not what you are doing is legal. So, for example, when it comes to pools, as long as your land allows for a pool and you get the pool license from town hall, your neighbors have absolutely no say on whether or not you have a pool or how your pool is. Same thing goes to the color of your house, the plants of your house, the fence of your house, etc., etc. No one has anything to do with that. When it comes to communal spaces, like, for example, there are rural properties where you have an access route that goes to the villa or property, and that access goes next to a neighbor property and so on, or it's considered communal. In those kinds of places, things pretty much act as accordance, so as agreement. So, for example, if there's a tree there that you want to cut down, both parties do need to be in agreement. But if it's something that is, once again, considered a risk of safety, then you can proceed and remove the tree without anyone being able to do any kind of implications for that. Another thing that is important to be aware of is that there isn't basically a small claim court here in Portugal, so small claims are usually internally solved because the justice system is extremely expensive and slow. So unless there is a big claim, usually no one will put a formal legal complaint about the situation because things really drag on. And that does have a lot of downsides because in truth it means that the justice system doesn't work very well. But overall it also means that most things get solved in an amicable way between neighbors, and there aren't generally suing or big problems around these kind of situations with condominiums and shared property and so on. Of course, there is also the exception, but it's definitely not the rule. So I believe this pretty much covers the information on condominiums. I hope that this video was helpful. If you do have any further questions, feel free to leave them down. We always love to hear your feedback, and we also love to hear your suggestions. For example, this video about condominiums was a suggestion from a client that complained it was really hard to find this kind of information, so I've put it out there. And I love to do that. We love to just provide information that is useful for everyone who is seeing it, and we love to get your feedback on it. So once again, if you are consider moving to Portugal, renting or buying in Portugal, do to take a look at our services in www.savvycatrealty.com. We have all the information listed in a transparent way there. And we also provide a lot of free information, both on our weekly videos here on YouTube and on our blog, where you will be able to find a lot of useful information too in our website. So I hope that this was helpful, and I hope to see you all next week.